here in McCool Park in Balbafay, where in a few days' time we're going to have both semi-finals of the Radiant and the Gaeltacht Senior Football Championship here in Donegal. On Saturday evening it's St Eunan's, the holders, against St Michael's, and then on Sunday afternoon Naomh Conaill take on Kilcar in the second of the semi-finals. My colleagues in DonegalSportHub.com, Alan Foley and Chris McNulty, are with me. We did look forward to the quarter-finals back a couple of weeks ago, of course, up in Park Alka in Fintown, and only one of us actually got the four semi-finals correct, and it wasn't either of these two guys, I have to say. So Alan, you got it wrong the last time about St Eunan's.
I did.
We're going to start with the Saturday night game, Eunan's against Michael's, and you were saying just before we started filming here with Brendan O'Donnell from Jackson Media TV that you don't really have a clue how this game's going to go.
No, but I just think the whole St Eunan's thing, you were being a bit kind of reactive rather than proactive, because you said you'll go for St Eunan's because me and Chris didn't, so we'll just
I had other reasons for going for them, but anyway.
Well, in fairness, Maxi Curran and the boys fairly put me or Chris in her place. They come out with that kind of performance that you described, actually.
Yeah.
It was the sort of thing they weren't really going to have to. It was a great game. Like they played it tactically very smart. I suppose Glenswilly would be disappointed they missed a lot of chances in that game, but I suppose the final score, an 8-point winning margin, 3-7 to 8 points, is pretty comprehensive, is right, yeah.
What did you think, Chris? St Eunan's on the night produced their best performance of the year. Glenswilly, you'd have to say, a bit below par, but you can't take it away from St Eunan's. When they needed to produce a big performance, they did.
Yeah, it was probably the performance we were waiting on the couple of weeks previous when they played Donegal. They came into that game on the back of a heavy defeat to Naomh Conaill, and we'd all said we were waiting for this backlash from St Eunan's. They saved it for Glenswilly. Like, it was a real message of intent by Maxi Curran and the boys, like, because they were coming in with a lot of questions still lingering from that Glenties game a few weeks earlier, but by God they answered them in style. Like, to go out and do that to Glenswilly, in a repeat of last year's county final, and I suppose the tempers being what they are between the two sides and stuff, like, it was definitely a real marker laid down by St Eunan's, and I suppose a message for their opposition going forward.
Yeah, well, earlier in that day we were in O'Donnell Park to watch St Michael's really take Malin apart, and I mean I'd seen Malin against Gweedore, and I think we both felt that Malin could really scare St Michael's. The game was over at half time. Very impressive performance by St Michael's.
Yeah, the game was over actually after about 15 or 16 minutes when Kieran Gallagher got their second goal. Malin just totally buckled after that. Even up to that, you got the sense that St Michael's were just they were turning the screw by the minute. Andrew Kelly got a goal after 7 minutes, and from there the writing was on the wall, and Malin had no answer to them. And when Kieran Gallagher put in that second goal after 16 minutes, it was curtains, and it was pretty much a cakewalk for St Michael's. The big thing for them, they didn't lift the feet off the gas in the second half. They came out 3 points in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second half, and Andrew Kelly added a third goal. Like, it was, I suppose, another wee message from St Michael's. It's probably hard to know what they'll take out of it, given that it was such an easy game for them after the 15-minute mark. Like, so for 3/4 of that game they weren't tested. They're going to get a test next weekend.
Sure. The Declan Bonner factor, a lot of people talking about it, brought in by St Michael's. You have to feel with his experience in management, he's having an effect on them. Alan, in all seriousness, I mean, this is a clash of giants here. Last year's semi-final between the two clubs was a classic. Could have went either way. I think we mentioned that the last day we were up. And as Chris mentioned the last time, this St Michael's team, and Christy Toy in his after-match interview with me more or less admitted to it, they've got to win a championship, and they're running out of time, some of them.
Yeah, and I think to do that, Charlie, they've got to win a big game. As Chris said there, they kept their foot on the gas against Malin. We saw them in the group stage. They beat Conaill about 10 points. They kept their foot on the gas. They've done it against Four Masters in Conaill Park. They're not learning from them sort of games. I think for their own benefit, really, they need to come through against the likes of St Eunan's, Kilcar, Naomh Conaill, or Glenswilly. I know that they went down to Townie last year and won in the group stage, but then kind of when the crunch came on them, they were beaten in that low-scoring game at Glenswilly. I think it was 1-4 to 1-2.
That's right, yeah.
So I think for their own benefit, and maybe when the draw came out, the one team they probably didn't want to play was St Eunan's, because St Eunan's have had a bit of a grip on them in recent years. Like the 2006 semi-final here, St Michael's had it 1-1 ends up. There was just a last-minute hopeful ball went in the square. I think it was maybe an own goal by Jared Gallagher. Ross Wordy wasn't. Nobody really knows who, but St Eunan's scraped through. The same thing last year's game could have gone either way, and I suppose even in 2011, St Michael's, if it wasn't for Michael Murphy's brilliance here in the county final, they would have taken home the Dr. Maguire. So I think they just need a big game. But I suppose if they want to break down maybe that mental block they have, they may as well do it against the team that has had the grip over them. So with that, there's just so much to play for them.
Absolutely. And what I liked about them, Chris, is Colin McFadden, Christy Toy, Martin McElhinney, the Gallaghers, Peter Wotherrow, them names that have been there for a while, but Michael Langan was very good. Is it Lee Carr in the half forward line, very good, and the other lad centre half forward, Michael Cannon, very good as well. Young players coming through, and they always add something new to a squad.
Yeah, something St Michael's have this year that they probably didn't in the past as a squad. Like you see the likes of Anton McFadden coming off the bench. I mean, 3 years ago Anton McFadden was in the Donegal panel that won the All-Ireland.
Yeah.
Like that's a serious player to be bringing off a bench at club level. Lee Kerr started his first game against Malin. It's hard to believe that because he's been on the periphery of the squad for a couple of seasons now. You mentioned Michael Langan, who was excellent the last day. But go back then, I suppose the lesser maybe known St Michael's players, but you know the likes of the Rocks, Kieran Gallagher and Michael Gallagher, so important to them. Mark Anthony McGinley's only come in there since last year, and you know a real good asset, not just in goal, but in terms of his free taking, his kicking of 45s, so vital with on the other side to Colin McFadden, if you will.
Yeah.
But those big players are still key. Like Martin McElhinney was outstanding the last day. He gave them a real sort of Lord and Master performance at centre field. But to me, the player of the championship so far has been Andrew Kelly. Again, an unheralded player for St Michael's. He played minor and under 21 for Donegal. He was part of a couple of St Eunan's college teams that went a bit of a distance in Ulster competition as well. And he's a player that has really sort of flourished in a new role. They've given him a bit of an attacking license.
Sure,
He sort of switched with Colin McFadden. Colum's come back deep and Andrew's gone in. He hit 2-3 the last day. I mean, a real fantastic performance. And you touched there on the Declan Bonner factor. I think maybe it's something, St Michael's have never been lacking for talent on the field. Like, I mean, they've one of the best squads of players that are in Donegal, and maybe the addition of Declan Bonner to their backroom team could just be that wee kick they need to take them over the line.
Absolutely. Well, St Eunan's, I mean, with Rory Kavanagh back and Peter Devine back and Keelan Ward back and John Hearn still doing it remarkably. Kevin Rafferty picked up our Player of the Week award as well, and obviously was on the Team of the Week as well. He was fantastic. They're all going to have to play well again, Alan. So we're going to have to call this. So I'm going to put you on the spot. St Michael's, St Eunan's.
I think it's an interesting clash of styles. First of all, I think St Michael's are probably the best running team in the county. They've really good ball players, good runners with the ball. You can see St Eunan's, the kind of tactic they play. They're very careful with possession. It's deliberate. They're not just bucking a ball into the square for the hope of somebody getting it. You can see against Glensoy they didn't want to do that, and it was quite similar here in the game last year. Maybe having got a bit of egg on my face the last time, I kind of underestimated St Eunan's, as silly as that sounds. So I think maybe they'll be up for this, and I can see a game very similar to last year's game. St Michael's are probably more offensive now than they were then.
Yeah.
And I think it will come down to a point or two, maybe a point. But I think maybe just St Eunan's, when it comes down to that crux with 5 minutes to go, the experience might just take them over the line.
Okay, is that the way it's going to be, Chris? St Eunan's experience and the pressure on St Michael's as they get closer to another Dr Maguire Cup and a big game at the semi-final, will that be enough maybe to just shade it for St Eunan's?
I think so now. St Michael's are going to need not just a big performance from Colin Anthony next week. They're going to need scores. Like I mentioned, Andrew Kelly scoring 2-3. The way St Eunan's play, they'll have Andrew Kelly sort of well marshalled in that. And Colin's been playing a kind of a playmaker role for St Michael's this year, but for them to get over the line next week, they're going to need one of Colum's 5-star displays. Now, we talked about Declan Bonner's influence, and I suppose Maxi Curran has to get an awful lot of credit for what he's done at St Eunan's, and we look at what he's done as well with the Donegal under 21s. Everything Maxi does is measured, everything's for a reason, and everything's all about the end game. And for me, St Eunan's are used to that. St Michael's have brought Bonner in, and he's only there a couple of weeks, and it's going to take a wee bit of time to get used to what he wants them to do. And we've already seen them.
Hasn't got much time now.
Exactly, Charlie. And, to be starting to change things, which we did see a change in St Michael's against Malin. It's a significant change. Have they enough time to prepare for a St Eunan's team that is so measured, so composed? And you mentioned the likes of Hearn, Rafferty, Conaill Dunn, Rory Kavanagh. These boys, I mean, they're seasoned campaigners, Charlie. Many of them have been in county finals year on year since the late 1990s. That's got to stand for something. And after seeing them, what they did to Glenswally, St Eunan's are going to go up another notch, and to me that's going to make the difference, and I'm definitely going to avoid Naomh Toy next weekend.
Okay, you got a bit of stick from Naomh Toy, quite rightly so. Anyway, both of you going for St Eunan's then?
I think just to finish, the thing about last year's game, everyone chats about the end-to-end game it was, and it was so exciting, but from a St Eunan's point of view, they would have felt kind of pretty upset by conceding 2 poor goals in the first 7 or 8 minutes. So
yeah,
maybe they look at it by going in the last 50 minutes of the game they actually won by 7 points. So it was maybe in that respect, it wasn't the over and back as we suggested. So I'm sure they don't want to make a kind of that sort of nightmare start again this year as they did last year. So I think, as I said, Chris said, I don't think there's much in this now at all, and
no.
I think very few people would begrudge St Michael's a championship because they're pretty well got, and they've been knocking on the door so long. But,
Yes, I suppose one thing St Eunan's have really going for them, bar that game against Naomh Conaill, they're not conceding big scores. Like, they've got a really solid structure there at the back and stuff. And looking at St Michael's, their big strength is going forward. So as Alan says, it really is a real clash of styles.
Yeah. But you're both going for St Eunan.
Just about.
Just about, and I certainly won't be putting money on it.
All right then, I'll go for them as well then, just to balance things out perfectly. Let's move on then to Sunday afternoon. Naomh Conaill and Kilcar. Kilcar haven't been in a final for us. It's 27 years, Chris, something like that.
1993. The last time they won it actually is
incredible,
the last time they've
incredible.
been in a
A club like that haven't been there. Huge amount of young talent. Naomh Conaill are another team, we can put them in the category should have done better, could have done better, and should have done better in terms of making the breakthrough in the mid-noughties and really not dominating the way that we thought that they might. Kilcar, Naomh Conaill?
Well, I suppose looking at where the two clubs are coming from, Kilcar are probably at a stage now that Naomh Conaill were a few years ago, where they've got those minor under-21 teams coming through and looking to make a break in senior football. 22 years, it's too long for a club like Kilcar. I mean, the tradition and sort of heritage in the championship that they have, 22 years is, it's a famine for them. Naomh Conaill, as you say, look, they really should have won more Dr. Maguire's than the couple they have. Looking at the matchups, Naomh Conaill are going in maybe perfectly placed. Like the script over the line against Termon, I mean, it was a night Termon left here.
Yeah. Left it behind them, maybe.
Yeah, and look, we all thought that Naomh Conaill were going to blow Termon out of the water, but they came here with a plan and with a purpose. They pushed them all the way, and but for a wee lack of a clinical edge in the final third, we'd be talking about Termon and not Naomh Conaill. It's probably the scare Naomh Conaill needed. And I was speaking to Cathal Corey briefly when the teams were leaving here that night, and you got a sense that they had got the message and they had got it loud and clear, because look, their championship lives were on the ropes for long periods of that game. Kilcar, very much like St Michael's, they had a cakewalk in their quarter final. After
they've won all their games pretty comfortably so far.
They haven't really been tested. An interesting one, Mark McHugh spoke to us that day. The furthest they've been, some of their players, has actually been the home game in Towney.
That's right.
Because the last day they were actually closer to Fintra than they were to Towney. They're coming through the gap now for the first time. They're going to get a big test for the first time in this year's championship. They're a wee bit vulnerable without Conor McShane on at full back, and there are question marks about their defence. But the performance of the likes of Stephen McBurdy, Ryan McHugh, Mark McHugh the last day, they were outstanding. Fantastic. If they can get Patrick McBurdy up to that level, he's been carrying a bit of a knock that he's clearly hampered. But if they can get him on fire as well, they'll be a really tough nut to crack. Now, for me, I would be slightly edging with Kilcar in this one.
Okay. Naomh Conaill, question marks about them. Big performance against St Eunan's in the championship, but that's really the only big performance they've produced so far. They were fantastic that day, and any of us leaving O'Donnell Park felt, no, these guys are really at it this year. But they didn't follow that up. They didn't need to beat Ardra by much because they're already qualified. But as Chris said, against Termon, a lot of question marks about them.
There was, but I don't really think they're on the ropes at the same time. I think when the question was asked of them when Ricky Gallagher got the goal with 15 minutes to go, they answered it still. And even before the game, we spoke to Martin Regan, and he said the one thing he noticed about his own panel is they don't really win 60% games. He said it was nearly full duck or no dinner type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I suppose in a funny sort of way, they won a 60% game the last day, and I know they were far from the best, but at the same time they got the result out of it, where maybe that's the sort of game in years gone by they might have maybe made a mess of or whatever. So I still think they're a serious outfit, and I actually think on paper they probably have the best 1 to 15 of the 4 teams left, and as we know, the 4 teams are all very good sides and all very evenly matched, so I wouldn't really be writing them off yet. And I know they went down to Towney, and in the league they won by a point. It was a bit of a league game feel to it. Well, that's what Martin Regan says, but then the guys from Kilcar and anybody else says maybe there's a little bit more than a league feel, but I don't know how much you can read into that. But I just think they have a serious panel there, and they can absorb 1 or 2 injuries now, where I think with Kilcar they don't have that probably depth. I think it's fair enough to say that. But
and Kieran Thompson's made a big difference to Naomh Conaill this year.
Yeah, Kieran Thompson had a great season for the 21s, and he's just fitted in there. And even the last night when the kill chips were down, he was probably the fella that took them through. There was kind of a bit of panic, as Chris said, when Termon got the goal, but straight away Leo McClune caught a ball. They worked to score from it, just back in the groove, and then I think they went on to kick on, won by 3 points, which was not comfortable, but they still managed, as I said, to get through the gears when they had to do it.
I think the big thing about this game is that both teams will really feel this is a wonderful opportunity to make a final, because like the other game between St Eunan's and St Michael's, it's very hard to pick any big difference between these two clubs. There's certain strengths in both teams, maybe 1 or 2 little weaknesses in both teams, and on the day maybe it's just come down to whichever team produced a neat performance.
Yeah, because I suppose we could talk about it so we're blue in the face, and the same with the St Eunan's St Michael's game, but I think it will just come down to that. I was even looking at the betting last night just out of curiosity. Kilcar and St Eunan's are 9-4 for the championship. St Michael's and Naomh Conaill are 11-4.
The bookies are not. They don't get much wrong. The bookies.
So between first favourites and last favourites, you have 9-4 to 11-4. So it's absolutely nothing really. You could toss a coin really for both games this weekend, and I think it really will come down to on the day who wants it and who's the more hungry. But the one thing that will maybe swing it in Naomh Conall's favour for me is the fact that they probably have a better bench.
Okay, so you're going for Naomh Conaill?
Just about again.
You're going for Kilcar?
Yeah, I'm going for Kilcar, having seen what they did to Four Masters last week, and I know maybe Four Masters, look, they were well below their best and what they're capable of, but the form that the likes of Stephen McBurdy and Ryan McHugh in particular are in. Kieran McGinley also had a fantastic game, and Michael Higgerty, very much like sort of those boys we mentioned with St Eunan's, the Harans, the Raffertys, the Kavanaghs. He's playing some of the best football he's ever played. And for Kilcar, now the one thing I suppose the strength of Naomh Conaill is in that forward division, Liam Thompson, Dermot Malloy and Dara Gallagher, and maybe the question marks of Kilcar, especially with Conor McShane injured, are in the back line. So look, if Naomh Conaill can expose those frailties, then they're going to be hard to stop. But for me, Kilcar's attacking power, and especially those boys coming from deep out around the middle of the field, will be the difference.
Okay, so St Eunan's Kilcar for the final?
Yeah.
St Eunan's Naomh Conaill for the final?
Yeah, we'll be popular around the bridge, us three boys.
You certainly will. Well, I'm going to go for St Eunan's and Kilcar as well, so I'm going to go with Chris. But anyway, it'll all be revealed here at McCool Park in a couple of days' time. On Saturday evening, of course, it's St Eunan's against St Michael's, 7:30 start for that one. And on Sunday afternoon at 3:30, it's Naomh Conaill against Kilcar, and that will decide, hopefully, unless there's a replay, which is not beyond the bounds of possibility, in either of these matches, of course, who will contest the Dr. Maguire Cup final here in McCool Park. A couple of weeks further on, we'll have preview, we'll also have updates, and we'll have reaction from both semi-finals over the weekend and into the start of next week.